Guys, if you like this video and this conversation, please put a like on this video and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Playback TV. You can as well subscribe to Yuri Tabach channel. His link will be under description for that video. Here we go. Yuri, I would like to give you a disclaimer before we start this video. I noticed that on last of your streams you do that quite often, and that's the thing that could be a useful tool for the future. I'm Nikolai's nickname Colin Blake, and I was a journalist in the past, like 10 years in a musical television. Now I don't do that anymore. I still work in a musical industry, but first of all, I'm not affiliated to any state organizations or public media or whatsoever. I'm not getting any financial funding or whatever. I'm not doing any political propaganda or hidden context, and all the expenses in this video I'm heading on my own. This channel is non-commercial, non-profitable and transformative in nature. I don't gain any revenue from that views or any reward of whatsoever.
I'll make the same disclaimer. I don't get paid for this. I don't work for anyone, and I don't represent any country or any organization. It is all completely on my own.
First question will be from my own. It's about your immigration to United States. You mentioned in your previous interview that it's been when you was at age 14, you were relocated, you moved there with your parents. Can you please describe a mutual common picture, not exactly maybe all the details, but how does America changed from the time when you first moved in there and with the nowadays reality?
Well, when we came to the United States, President Carter was a president, and he was probably considered to be very left at the time. But if you compare it to today, he would be very right on a scale. His major accomplishment was that he was able to create peace between Jordan, Egypt, and Israel, which was a huge accomplishment, although Israel had to give up a few things. But since then, it was relative peace with Arab countries. In the sense, there were no full-scale wars against Israel launched except Syria and Beirut for some time. But he was considered to be a weak president, considering that, again, there were problems in Iran. He kind of let Iran go. Although many people don't know this, President Carter was a professional naval officer. He was a submariner. He graduated from our Naval Academy at Annapolis. And Admiral Rickover, I think, was grooming him to be a submarine naval leader in our Navy, but he chose to be, a lot of people thought he was a farmer, a peanut farmer, but that's not true. He was a professional officer. And he let Iran kind of disappear, and then he was trying to emulate like an Entebbe type raid and free our hostages in Iran from Ayatollahs. But that mission went bad, and soldiers got killed. Delta Force and Green Berets that were sent there, it didn't go well. It was kind of an embarrassment compared to the brilliant operation of Entebbe that was conducted in 1976 by the Israelis. So 75 or 76, I think 76. And so then came President Reagan, who was kind of an outcast as well, although he was a governor of California, and this is when California prospered and was one of the best states compared to now, where it's a total disaster, where actually now people in California can rob stores or businesses, and if it's less than $1,000, you can't touch them. And if you're underage, which means they rob stores, they give the stolen goods to kids under 16, and then they can't touch them at all. So if it's over $1,000, and now they're coming up with because there's some immigrants in California that trying to protect their businesses, and they resist the robberies and muggings. Well, now California is coming up with a law that you cannot bother, you cannot touch people that are robbing you or stealing stuff from you. You can't, otherwise you're going to be fined or even put arrested and fined up to, I think, up to like 19 or something $1,000. So if somebody comes into your store and wants to rob it, you just got to let them do it. You can't protect yourself.
Unbelievable.
That's how ridiculous it is. So of course businesses are bankrupting, and businesses are leaving California, and their state is in debt, and people are escaping it. But those people who are leaving the state, which is funny, they go to a Republican state, and then they want the same laws and taxes as they were in California, which is also very high. So President Reagan then became a president the very next day, because the Iranians knew that he was a strong leader and he was a tough guy. And although the critics and the left was criticizing, at that time there was no left, but let's say Democratic Party was criticizing him in the same way they're doing it to President Trump, trying to accuse him of everything in the world, being a Nazi, being a dictator, and so forth. But the Iranians knew that he was a tough guy, and they let the hostages out the very next day after he was sworn in as a president, because they knew he was going to go after them, and he was not going to tolerate Americans being captured by some ayatollahs or some religious freaks. So then, of course, we know that President Reagan, in partnership with Margaret Thatcher, they were able, and in partnership with Chairman Gorbachev, they were able to denuclearize the world and make relative peace and disassemble Soviet Union. So he did a lot of things, Reagan, and this is the time that I was a young man, and I heard the speech of President Reagan saying that Russia or Soviet Union, I mean, at the time, Russia and Soviet Union were synonyms, that they are, it's an evil empire, and he's right to this day that Russia is an evil empire. I decided that I was going to, serve the United States, protect the American values, protect the American way of life, and of course, as a young man, I chose to be in the military, and I chose to join the military. And I figured if I was going to join the military, I was going to join the most militaristic military. It means the Marine Corps, the United States Marine Corps. Also, I was impressed with the Marines. When my parents in Italy used to go for interviews to the American embassy, and I would see the MSGs, Marine Security Guards, there, and they impressed me very much. So to this day, I have a very much love for Marines and Marine Security Guards at the embassies. And I have this love-hate relationship with American diplomats or diplomats in general, consular officers, the ones that hand out visas, because I saw the way they were treating my parents that was very similar to the KGB tactics and techniques. So, although I had the honor to serve with some of the best consular officers at the U.S. embassies, but my childhood memories of it were not fun. So that's the story, how we immigrated and what I did in my early days in the United States.
That's awesome to hear. That's awesome to hear. After speaking with former sergeant of the U.S. Army, I have also my landmate. We used to speak when he was back from his service. He said once, "Hey, I'm gonna show you like my service card, but service record." But it didn't happen because we split ways. I'm in the Netherlands. He's staying back there, making some sport activity. He also mentioned some days before when we was talking, like, after watching the Gordon interview, said, "Hey, what a nice man I just discovered for myself." I said, "Who?" I said, "Yuri Tabach." I said,
Thank you.
"I know Tabach also." He was like that. And I was thinking of an idea after discussing with him how to join U.S. Army. So I would like to go there. Maybe Marines, that would be best for sure, but maybe just land, how to say. There's an Air Force, there's a Land Force, and there will be simply land ones. And if that's still possible, what kind of restrictions they have? Age-old restrictions, maybe. What or need to be do. Is that actually possible for an immigrant, or you got to be a United States born, or in a
No,
couple
you
of
have
ways?
to be, in order to join as an enlisted man, you have to be naturalized. You have to have like a green card. In order to be an officer, you have to be a citizen. Of course, everybody who joins in as an enlisted man with a green card, very quickly they become citizens after a certain amount of time of serving in the military. But there is an age resistant restriction. I think you're a little too old to be a soldier. And how old are you?
36, sir. I'm 36.
Yeah, you're a little old. Yes,
Uh,
it's a little too old to be a soldier. And you have to be in a decent shape. You have to be able to run, jump, do things, and you have to be. You have to have. I think as an enlisted man, minimum you have to have a high school diploma,
I do.
meaning that you graduated from high school. Yeah.
I do. But judging what you say, to be an officer, it's more complicated. Like it's not too easy to get there. It's not guaranteed that you will stay, because every year they have like, or they continue a contract with you, or you've been disqualified. Especially like you said, if you do everything by the roster, everything you following the orders, they
Well, you can only. I think you can only be an officer up to age 35. So you just missed it, and then it's very, very high competition. The ones that become before age 35, they, they were prior enlisted, so they were prior sergeants, or they were in the military before, and then they went to college or they went to the academy, and then they become officers. So they're a little bit older, but and yet they still have to be. It has to be before age 35. After 35, it can't be an officer. And enlisted, most of the enlisted individuals, they're 18, 19, 20. They're not 35.
Okay, that's got it. All right. The second question, which was also one of my interest, but I split it to three parts. And I made it a short way so you can understand that word capitalism, that fashioned word of everybody is speaking now. So the mutual subject is a capitalism. We divide it in three parts. First is, are there any real examples of state that are living by this regime now? Not to mention all this Europe with this museum of socialism, and maybe even America, because the way Europeans see that, I'm talking to the Dutch people, they see it like a big, under curtain communism, really, but they sell it out as a capitalism. Number two is how to implement it literally nowadays. And number three is rules of the society prohibits us basically to apply capitalism. How to be about it. So, are there any examples of the countries that is living
Well, I don't,
when
I know that
everybody is
there
for
are
themselves?
no. Well, I don't know any country that's pure capitalism. I mean, we all, in any developed society, there needs to be social justice. There needs to be a social net for sake for old people, for disabled people, for a lot of different things. You can't have just pure capitalism. There needs to be uh, social institutions.
And helping each other.
Even education, medicine, yeah, and helping. And now, probably in the world, it's too much of it, because then to become a socialist, communist, Marxist, or whatever ways doing it, which creates bureaucracy. And it used to be churches, and it used to be private institutions that did those things. We can see a lot of it now happening in Ukraine, because government cannot, on its own, support the military or support the wounded. So there's a lot of volunteers and a lot of institutions involved that are socialists, with the social justice type. So I don't know any country that's pure capitalism, nor do I know a country that's pure communism or pure socialism. It's a mixture, and the trick is to find the perfect balance, which I think, there are close to it, where you have a balance of things that are pretty good. But the smaller the country, I guess it's the easier to do it. In the United States, it's a very big country. It's a large country, so it's more difficult to do it, to make the system work perfectly or work well. But I guess in the United States, we were the closest ones, and we're the ones that set up the example of it, where the people run the country for themselves. And we're all kinds of people from all kinds of walks of life, religions, races, cultures, and so forth. Life is not simple. It's difficult, and it's a lot of times it's not just. Pure communism, I guess the only place there was a pure communism was in Israel in the kibbutz, where people just worked and didn't get paid. But I think in the early stage of a country, or when people are in danger, yeah, then they have to create those camps type of a thing in order to survive, like the army. But once the country becomes developed and becomes progressive, uh, then those communist socialist ideologies, they simply are not needed anymore. They don't work anymore. So there's different systems, but I'm not an economist and I'm not a social studies type of an individual. So I really can't intelligently answer your question.
It was a good answer. Okay, to discharge this
Okay.
situation. In the middle was somewhere my question, like on the place 17. But I'll ask you now. Do you live now in Miami, as far as I know? Describe the city. How does it feel? How is the Florida in common? I've never been there.
It's very nice. I like Florida. Florida is a good state, thanks to Governor DeSantis, who was able to make it a very good place to live. I also live in Philadelphia, where I grew up, which it used to be a great place to live. It was a cold city with brotherly love. Now it's a capital of murder and disaster. And it's again thanks to the people we voted into this into running our city, and a lot of crime there. So I live sometimes in Philly, sometimes in Miami. I have two homes.
Nice.
And I live in Kiev, in Ukraine, quite a bit.
In Kiev, in really capital, because
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, how is that the place where you are now? As far as I know from your previous streams, you basically made it until front lines, and is there very hot or?
Yeah, it's a very good situation here.
So
Actually, right now I'm not. I know it looks beautiful outside where I am, but it's not that quiet here.
there
It's
will
not
be
that.
one day. I'm sure we'll get through.
This is why we have a bad connection.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get through it one day. And as the idea that should be said at at the end, Yura, when it's all will be ended, I invite you. Let's say how
Thank you.
said it in your style. Take your kids, and I invite you to the Amsterdam, to the Netherlands. Drive through it, just
Thank you.
party, and when it's all be ended, I hope we can meet us in Europe or somewhere in this world. So allow me to say, since today is a Saturday, it should be the beginning, but Shabbat Shalom. We're doing a good thing.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
And
Thank you.
let's start with those questions which I made with the Ukrainian community of refugees here. There was a young guy from Harkov and his girlfriend from Lvov.
I just wanna tell you, I don't have all the time, so we need to make it
Okay, let's make it quick.
30 minutes now.
Yeah.
All right.
So first, during a full-scale invasion, why the skies above Ukraine was not sealed, although they could do it, and why the sky isn't closed until now?
I think it's because the U.S. administration and the White House did not want it. They didn't want to help Ukraine. They said the Ukraine was going to fall in 3 days, and that there was no point investing such expensive equipment in it. And when it all started, they kept waiting and waiting that Ukraine would fall. And once Ukraine started to advance and win and push Russians back, then the American people and the rest of the people who are responsible said, okay, we got to help Ukraine. We got to help Ukraine. So administration started to give a little bit and a little bit, but the skies are still not closed. They're still trying to beat Ukrainians into the submission, going into the negotiations with Putin. So in short, I do not think that it is administration of the United States, particularly President Biden and his surrounding, his supporters, want Ukraine to exist.
Okay, clearly. Next one is your comments. I would like to hear your comments about the recent blast on the Herson GES Hydra power plant. And is it possible to repeat of the terract of Zaporozhskaya AES nuclear power plant?
Sure. Terracts are always good to repeat. That's what terrorists do. They repeat the terracts that worked before. And actually, they usually scale it up and match up to see when it's going to be people will submit into it, or when somebody's going to start resisting them, start killing them for that. So far we have not resisted Russian terror. We have not shown our willingness to fight them. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of movement and gestures, but not serious, aggressive way of stopping them. So Ukrainians continue to fight. Ukrainians continue to pay a very high price. And yes, Russians will conduct more terror until we stop them.
All right. During the beginning of all conflict in 2014, how was you looking in the future, in the perspective of it all? And how far is your vision differs from today's reality?
It wasn't far. From my experience regarding Georgia, regarding the experiences with Vietnam, with North Korea, with Israel, every time we do not resist, every time we do not break the neck of a terrorist, he will continue to act. So I knew that once the Ukrainians were forced, again, they didn't want to, but they were forced again by this administration. That was Barack Obama at the time, but still President Biden, or at that time Vice President Biden, for corruption reasons or for whatever, many reasons probably, was responsible for Ukraine, where his son was very heavily involved in business that was not clean. Let's say that it definitely was conflict of interest, at least conflict of interest. But now we find out how corrupt it was. I knew that once they let them get away with that, once they let them get away with Chechen people, they moved into Georgia. Once we let them get away with Georgia, setting the reset button, again, President Obama with Miss Clinton, I knew that they were going to go somewhere else. They went into Crimea and Donbass region. So once we didn't do anything about it and told them to give up Crimea without resisting, Ukrainians did. It was a matter of time before they start going into and invading or breaking up Ukraine or Kazakhstan or whatever, or Belarus gave up. And they will not stop until we stop them. Appetite comes
during the
while you're eating.
While you're eating, yeah, that's right.
Right. So that war was inevitable, and it's going to continue until we start resisting. Until we start, sheep will not defeat wolf. Only a wolfhound will defeat wolves. Meaning that an animal that looks like wolves, acts like wolves, but more aggressive than wolves. We did not defeat Germans or Japanese because we're trying to negotiate with them something. We defeated them only because we showed more aggression than they did. So this type of aggression, you can stop only with more aggression, with more aggressive actions against them. So until we break Russians' neck, this will continue and will spread. People will suffer, and will reflect on our economies, on the environment, and on our well-being as a Western society.
Unfortunately. Okay. The following is: can we pick up a recent scandal with the jackets? Probably you heard that in media when there was acquisited and sold with triple price the jackets for the soldiers. And can we get a couple of comments from you? How do you say on that?
Well, I think that during the war, there's always criminals. There are always people that are crooks that will use wounded soldiers, dead soldiers, people that are suffering, people with cancer. There will be schemers, there will be thugs, and there will be crooks that will make money off of these unfortunate people. Unfortunately, many of them sometimes exist in the government, exist among people that the nation has trusted them with serving the people, but in turn they're stealing from the people. The very vulnerable situation is a war because everything goes to the war effort, and they take advantage of it because there's no time to investigate them. There's no time to watch because you just got to get the stuff to the front and fight because your lives depend on it. And these crooks, they take advantage of it. So I hope the investigations will continue into them, and I hope they'll be judged by the law of war.
That's nice. The second question is about me, about my homeland, Moldavia. I'm curious as a neighbor because Ukraine has a lot of neighbors, including us, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania. Is there a probability that they might suffer from this? Because when it all began, I remember there was a plane crash near the Romanian border, and there was human casualties, a couple of Romanian troops and soldiers. And reading the timeline of a well-known Romanian performer of arts, they wrote something like, "We give only green corridor to these countries, nothing else. We don't need to get in somebody's tomato soup." Do you have maybe full-scale vision about this future expansion, or might something like this to be started parallel with this process, assuming that attackers have a lot of resources actually?
They do have a lot of resources, although Ukrainians are destroying it, but they on their own will not be able to destroy all of it without our help. Yes, you can expect anything you want. From a terrorist, you should expect that they will not stop until we stop them. So yes, Moldova needs something, has something to worry about. So does Kazakhstan, so does other neighbors of Russia, including probably the NATO countries.
Yeah. Well, let's see what tomorrow brings. After two successful counter assaults from under Harkov and under Herson, how do you describe the situation with counter strike on Zaporozhskom destination?
I don't comment on that because this is war. These things change very quickly. This is too early to comment on it. The victory it changes very quickly. During World War II, Kharkov changed hands 6 times. So I think it is very, very early in this offensive operations to comment on its success or failure, which many people are doing, and I think they're doing disservice to Ukraine. Too early.
All right, solid there. The next question: how strong the transferring of F-16 jets will change the better way situation now in Ukraine? Because we initially witnessed javelins, we've seen Bayraktars, we've seen HIMARSs, etc. Well, how powerful that will help from your point of view? Zelensky said once, for fully seal the sky, we need about 260 jets, but we are still far away from that digit.
We're far away from any digit. There are no jets in Ukraine at this point, and when they get here and when they start become operational is unknown. What weaponry will they carry is all unknown. I'm not sure Ukrainians can afford to wait that long. We need to provide Ukrainians with something now and not something so remotely in the future. So, in even whatever, the rumor is about 60 jets, which is not enough.
All right. The following, if we are in such a good mood, can I ask you some question, with a humor? Do you believe actually in that Putin has duplicates or they actually exist? Because on the internet there are a lot of comparisons, and he is alive actually. Is he alive?
What difference does it make?
Yeah.
How does it affect you, me, or the situation in the world if he has duplicates or not? If he does have duplicates, they can be only from far away. I don't think he has anybody who actually takes his place, because in today's technologies, you can't really fool them.
What are your?
They can see right those cameras, those programs. They can see right away if it's the same person or not.
Exactly. Thank you. Well, what are your prognosis for on the liberation or return of Crimea? Is this about to happen, and how do you estimate in common situation with Crimea Island?
I'm not somebody who sells future news. I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay.
This is a future news. I don't know what a future news are going to bring. I'm a military man. I just want to take the next objective. If it's a street, then we got to take the street. If it's a city, we got to take the city. If it's part of the country, then we got to liberate part of the country. I can't think of something that's going to happen 100 years from now or whatever. A lot of things can change by then. A lot of things can happen. Crimea legally is Ukraine, and it should be liberated. When it's going to happen and how it's going to happen, I don't know.
Okay. The next question was from our community. When will be completely victory? How far as the citizens of Donetsk and Lugansk will be slowed down in development?
Listen, brother. I'm telling you, I'm not that. I can't tell the future. This is to someone else. There's plenty. Pintkovsky, Shvets, Arestovich, Gordon. You have a bunch of these people who will tell you the future. I'm not. I can't tell you when Donetsk is going to, when the war is going to be over. Well, I don't even know if we're going to be alive tomorrow or even today. I can't sell future news.
Yeah, that was one of the next questions. Actually, the people you mentioned, I didn't want to even mention their names because it sounds like sometimes after watching the videos of content that I like, interesting people, I often get recommendations. Watch this video, and there's a lot of these people in headphones who are having access to all information. Who knows everything better than us? I honestly I don't watch them because first to not get that in my history of digital trail. One of you mentioned looked like he ain't got off his house for 72 years and considers himself a colonel of what? And what is, according to your opinion, biggest mistake of the Ukraine, which, if it did not happen, all this won't have happened? You might name three mistakes. If more than one exists, we'll select a relevant one. If you
There's
doubt,
plenty. There are plenty of mistakes that we have made. All of us, I guess. I don't know if it's a mistake or it's not a mistake. It's a human nature. We trust our neighbors. We want to be friends with our neighbors. I guess trusting Russians or trying to conduct yourself in a civilized manner with them, thinking that you can come to some sort of agreement or to live in peace with them, was a mistake. You can't. Um, uh, Mistake number, there are plenty of mistakes. Supporting one party over another in the United States is a mistake, and it is constantly going on in Ukraine. They take only one side. Now it's Ramaswamy, the candidate to be candidate for presidency of the United States from the Republican Party. Now they're beating on him, never mentioning another candidate from the Democratic Party, which is Congressman Kennedy, just his name, even though he's saying even worse things about Ukraine. Basically, they're working, it's clearly that Ukrainian mass media is working for one party, and that is a mistake. That is wrong, and it's a mistake. If you want to be, objective, you don't want to be biased, then it should be on both sides. You show good and bad from both sides, not just good on one side and all bad on the other side. So that's always a mistake, but I guess money talks and bullshit walks.
Bullshit talks, exactly. The guy said, I also have imagination that after they will be over, there will be also a lot of criminalitet, sufficiently much. Imagine Donetsk and Lugansk, if not only PTSR people who's going to return from the field will grab some guns, but that's not the only one. The citizens of Donetsk themselves, because they will think, hell, after so much years, and here it will be normal. He says, I talk crap. I said, no, it's a good question. And what do you think about it?
I think it's going to take a long time to become what we consider to be normal. It's going to be a long time. And if Donetsk and Lugansk will remain in the same status as it is now, meaning it's, only Russians consider them part of Russia and the rest of the world is not, it's going to be another Gaza or another Pridnestrovia. Basically contraband, prostitution, drugs, weapons, not somewhere where you want to raise a family and live what we consider to be a normal life. The Russians will turn it into the Gaza Strip.
All right. One of the guys asked, how big is the difference maybe between Zelensky and media? Because by television, radio, newspaper, magazines, no matter in any ways, maybe you'll understand. During this time, all funds there are funds granted on building some tough, expensive sport club. And is that worth to waste such money during this war, or it's better to transfer it on the front lines?
Well, I think it's a major mistake because this money is not Ukrainian money. This is the money that comes from the packages from the United States. So this money is obligated to certain things, building roads, conducting, uh, uh, making movies, building a sports complex, building a new U.S. embassy, although the one that we have is quite good. And doing so, this money is obligated already by the United States, not by the Zelensky government. So they have no say in it, although most of the Ukrainians do not understand it. So they get very angry with the government, saying, why are we building roads now? Why are we building a movie theater? Why are we building a sports complex? Why are we making movies? Why are we so concerned with the gender awareness education right now when there are people by thousands dying every day? Because that money by our Congress, by our government, have been dedicated to do that. So when they say that we gave $120 billion for the war effort in Ukraine, that is not true. And even fact checkers said it's not true because only 18 or 19 billion dollars are for the armed forces, for the weapons. And even then, a lot of it is not for the weapons to get today. It's to order more weapons for later. Like it may come 5 years from now, where Ukrainians need it right now. So a lot of that money is being funneled into the areas where are not necessary. That is why there's such a argument in our Congress where some Congress people, men and women, are voting against those packages because they're saying, "Listen, this is a waste of money. It's for environment, for this, for that." When there is a war going on. So what happens? The White House throws their own agenda into those packages for help to Ukraine. And if you vote against that because you want more money for the weapons and for the military, well, they never explain why you voted against it. What they do say, oh, you don't want to help Ukraine. And the Ukrainian media is very much involved in this disinformation by letting those what I call Soros loudspeakers to talk. So this is that angers Ukrainian people. It demoralizes Ukrainian troops, and it's not benefiting any of us that way. We're wasting money, and we're helping in that way Russians, not Ukrainians.
All right, this question, let's go to the next one. Will be able, hypothetically, people from East and West Ukraine finally negotiate and not to split Ukraine anymore?
I don't think there are people in the East or West in Ukraine. They're Ukrainians, and they're wholesome, and they're one. There is no East or West. There are some Ukrainians that prefer to speak one language over the other in their home, but not officially. Official language is Ukrainian language, but some people, Ukraine, just like in the United States or in any other modern country, there are different cultures here that little differ. Depends which part of the country you go to, but they're all Ukrainians. There is no East or West.
Yeah, there was just some opinion that I read from the early reviews that was something like a historical mistake of Stalin to unite all the big Ukraine with Western. If you can comment that split somehow, if that was really his mistake to unite, and, because they used to live. But okay. The following question is.
All right, buddy. I hate to do this, but we gotta start finishing it out because I gotta go.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I got like a lot of other things going on right
all right.
now.
We can do this following way. First, I cannot not ask you. Did you like this conversation at all? Because it was.
Yes, thank you. It's a good conversation.
Thank you. I can just the unfinished questions I can store somewhere. And if you have any time in the future, I hope.
I mean, you can ask me. Let's not ask me two more questions and then
Two
I
more
gotta
questions.
run.
All right.
Sorry.
When we used to have a nuclear demilitarization of the weaponing, how does it call, was signed a contract that in that case, Ukraine will commence an assault on Ukraine. 7 countries, I think there were 7 in, I remember, United States, United Kingdom, Russia, wasn't that contract, Germany or France, and more 2 countries,
There was an assault. Nothing was protected. How hard they will nailed us during
It's
that
it's
nuclear
a it's
contract.
a very difficult question. It needs. I have several programs about it, explaining it on my channel, on the nuclear Ukraine and so forth. The thing is, it was not an agreement. It was a memorandum. Memorandum is not a binding document, but by all due means, we should do the right thing. And in that memorandum, it says that we will not protect or guarantee the safety of Ukraine. It says that we will do everything possible to protect Ukraine. So, are we doing everything possible? No, I don't think so. But again, everybody can interpret that any way they want. This is why it's not a boundary document. It's not a really something. It's a memorandum. It's a note, and it says that there is no word guarantees. There's a word assurances. It was translated into Russian as guarantees, but it's not guarantees. And also, if you go back to 94, 96, when it was done, there were different people negotiating it. It wasn't just 4 or 5 or 10 presidents got together and negotiated. It took a long time. It was a scientists, there were military men, diplomats, they were all. But the problem was that they were all Soviets. At that time, they were not Ukrainians, they were not Belarusian, they were not Kazakh. They were all Russian, Soviet. They all went to the same school. They all served in the same armed forces. They all knew each other. And they trusted, I guess, each other more than they trusted us, the West. That's why it was a memorandum. That's why this is the way it happened. But regardless, we should stick by our word. We said we were going to do everything possible to protect those countries that gave up their nuclear weapons. I don't think we're trustworthy anymore because we're not doing everything. We're doing minimum.
Yeah. And one more. We aren't aware, basically, on which wars you was involved. I know you being in some hot zones. Which war zones you've been into. Basically, you reserve your right to not disclose this information. If you consider, could we ask you about this? How different is Ukrainian war that you see now compared to the rest which you saw?
Well, I've never seen a war like that. So I've never seen a war with artillery, with such a masses of destruction of the cities, killing of civilians in such masses. Yes, there were collateral damages, but there were definitely rules of engagement where you have to protect the civilian population and the infrastructure. You cannot destroy it. So, I've never seen anything like that. And I don't think anybody alive today in the world that have seen it. Maybe some very, very old folks that remember World War II. But since then, no, there was no such war, not such full scale war.
Okay.
With all the tanks and artillery and the hardware and weapons that I really already thought that outlived their use, that we were already in a different era of war fighting. But yet, World War II type of war is happening. Yeah, we're seeing new technologies like drones and UAVs and things like this, but still, mostly it's fought by artillery and infantry.
Yeah. Yura, I have two more. If there's two more, then we're done. Can I? The short one.
All right, but we got to do it quick.
Okay.
Let's do it
First,
quickly.
I'm a citizen. Yeah, I'm a citizen of European Union, and I can't miss the question: how's, not by the impression or pure statistic, Europe is now suffering or drowning? Summary of the factors that happened last time. That a lot of Ukraine living here. So, could they lead to breaking down to the European Union?
Of a breakdown of European Union.
Yeah, because summary of the facts that is happening.
The thing is, I'm not European. I don't understand
Okay.
how Europeans feel. I know that the Europeans, by the way I was explained, is that Europeans were trying to emulate the United States, making like one big Europe, like European Union, like the United States, like all these 50 states make up one country with one federal government. So Europeans were trying to do something, bring one currency like euro and things like that. I guess somewhere they were successful, but somewhere they weren't successful because again, it's not a melting pot. They're French, they're German, they're different. They're Italian, Spaniards, and when you mix those cultures and you force other cultures upon them, a lot of people don't want it, nor need it, nor is it productive. But on the other hand, I guess one bureaucracy is on top of it. Besides having a German bureaucracy, now on top of that is the is the European Union bureaucracy, and then there's a NATO bureaucracy, and becomes stagnant, and then it falls apart. I mean, that's how it works. There is no unity because Greeks think that Brits or Germans have more rights and they benefit more than the Greeks from the European Union, and vice versa. And the Brits and the Germans think, why are we paying for Greeks or Moldovans or whoever, or Romanians? So then, because it brings animosity to it. I think it's. I mean, we had North and South. It took a long time for us to fix that. So I don't know. I'm not a European, nor this is my area of expertise.
Okay. And the last one which I could ask, it was last on the list. Can Russia be evicted from the United Nations alliance to it be completely unable to put veto on any of proposal for this alliance? Because there are 7 countries in that alliance that are making decisions, and Russia has the right to block it with veto if any of these decisions, if everybody agreed. Can them be?
So you've answered your own question. I mean, they have the right of veto in Security Council. So how are you going to do it? I mean, I don't know. I can't see the mechanism of it's being done. United Nations, therefore, is useless nobodies, as we say. UN useless because they exist basically for one reason at this point, and that reason is to bash Israel and collect a lot of money. And United Nations have not prevented anything nor resolved anything for their entire existence. But it takes a lot of money, and we're paying a huge amount of money for people to travel first class and live in 5-star hotels. Because they're worried about hunger in Africa or rights of Palestinian people. Meanwhile, they live very, very well at our expense, not resolving that issue for as long as they exist. So that was my answer. So I don't see how they can kick Russia out of it. I don't see the mechanism because it was a big mistake. Again, it was that mistake actually I think was made by Carter. President Carter, by inviting China into it and putting them on Security Council, giving them the right to vote, and so forth. So that became a useless organization.
Yeah. Short question: Ukraine in 10 years, your opinion?
I don't know. I don't sell future.
Okay, like you said, Yuri. Thank you very much.
I'm not a future teller. All right.
Okay.
I hope
Anyways,
it's going to prosper.
That was nice interview. I heartily thank you for that.
Thank you.
I didn't know. Tell me your opinion. That
Thank you.
can I ask you? Did you like this? Because if honestly, that's my first big
Yes.
interview. Thank you very much.
I like talking to people. It's just that sometimes I'm elsewhere. So right now I gotta run.
Yeah, you gotta run. Keep in touch, and good luck there.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Over and out. Shabbat Shalom.